All right, do we have everybody? Sin, would you open us this morning?
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us here today. Thank you for the lesson that we are about to hear. And let us all have open ears and receptors to hear what we need to hear and what all this study has produced. Thank you for Daniel. Thank you for his example in our life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Wow. End of May. Incredible.
And the signs are up.
And the signs are up! Yes! And they're lit at night and you can see them, and yeah. I told Pastor I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think about now, but I'm sure the Lord has something in mind. So Daniel, and we're going to be talking about willing service, and for Memorial Day I can't think of a more appropriate thing to draw out of Scripture than willing service, because that's exactly what we're looking at Memorial Day. Let me kind of review last week just very quickly, and actually we're going to be looking here in chapter 2, and it's going to be split over this week and next week. There's just too much in there, but this is one of the very first. Remember I said when I introduced the series that we're going to have a lot of these epic Bible stories. Well, we're getting into one of the first big ones right here today, and we're going to split it up over 2 weeks because there's just too much good stuff in there. But let's go back to last week. What was the first key test that Daniel and his friends faced? Compromise. Right off the bat. Just to begin, they want them to compromise. And that's what Satan is. I mean, you go back to Garden of Eden, that's the first thing he gets by kind of changing what God said. Well, did he really say you couldn't touch it? You know, he starts adding things. I want you to compromise in your mind just a little bit. And so that's the very first test. Not some big awful test, not some big huge thing, some very small thing. How about if you just compromise just a little bit? How many days did it take for Daniel and his friends to show that they were healthier? 10. That's kind of actually pretty amazing. I mean, if any of you have ever done any dieting, you know, that sort of thing, 10 days, you know, you're just frustrated because nothing's happening.
That's true.
But yet here something is happening already within 10 days. The chief guard could see that, wow, okay, this is working. This is a good deal. They're going to stay on that program. Later when Nebuchadnezzar, and somebody pointed out, they went on Google and they said, how do you pronounce Nebuchadnezzar last week, and then they sent it to me very phonetically. So I've repurposed or retrained my tongue on how to say Nebuchadnezzar. By the way, how did they, in the Catholic Church, it's pronounced totally different.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, so completely, you know, changing the wrong syllable.
Can we just call him Neb?
Yeah. So anyway, all the boys in the training program, not just Daniel and his 3 friends, but all these other guys, come before Nebuchadnezzar at the end of the 3 years. They're tested, and Daniel and his friends were found to be 10 times better. Literally, that is 10. What does 10 times better mean, or what's the phrase?
10 hands.
10 hands. And think, you know, anybody that's worked with horses, you measure it by the hands, how tall they are, and that's a measurement of completeness. And a lot of times also when we see the number 10 in Scripture, every time I get these numerologist types that go, I saw the number 10, so that means, no, in this case it meant 10. But 10 oftentimes symbolizes completeness. So here they're found to be absolutely complete. They were completely better. 10 hands better than everybody else. In the first chapter of Daniel, believers are shown that those who are what to God will reap divine blessings. Faithful. If you wrote obedient, that's all part of that same thing. I can't tell you how many times in some of my counseling with with folks. They say, man, if God would just tell me what to do. I said, okay, well, let's start. I think he has. And it starts with obedience to everything. But yeah, no, but I want to know what my life. I said, okay, well, let's get through all the things that he's already told for everybody. And once you get a handle on that, then maybe he can focus on the details of your life. And it all starts with that obedience, with faithfulness. So what was then finally, because we're looking at, the title of this whole series is How to Live Under Pressure. What was the second principle of how to live under pressure?
Respect and
Respectfully, right?
politely.
And politely. Boy, would that change social media if everybody was polite and respectful?
It'd shut down.
Yeah, social media would probably just about shut down. But that's what the Christian's supposed to be doing. That's one of those things that Daniel shows us, even in a godless society, even under high pressure, he did so respectfully. He did so politely. And he's 15. 15-year-olds aren't always known for politeness and respect. Let me turn off the idiot box. So today, when we are out of, to kind of illustrate and get us started in here, when we are out of control, God is in control. I was talking with somebody from the church this week that thought that they had made just a horrific, horrific mistake. And what they had done was, maybe not the best. But I said, you know what? God already knew before he spoke the world into existence you were going to do that. His plan is still going forward. Life does not end, is not over because you did an oops. God wasn't sitting in heaven going, what now? Okay, now I got to fix this. Isn't that great? He may desire you to use you to help others, even to stop your own life from spinning out of control when you're busy helping somebody else. Are you a victim or a volunteer? Our society right now is victim-centered. Everybody's a victim. Everybody tries to find, how can I be a victim? Based on my sexuality, based on my skin color, based on my age, based on my socioeconomic platform, based on something, how can I be a victim? And God says, oh, no, how can you be a volunteer? Would you be willing to say like Isaiah did, here am I, Lord, send me? Isaiah 6:8. Or would you say, here am I, Lord, look at me? Mother Teresa once said, let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. What a great legacy.
Yes.
If by your service, everybody who comes in contact with you leaves better than they were, happier than they were. Former U.S. President Calvin Coolidge, there's somebody you all know real well. Doesn't get talked about like some of them. But I love this quote. No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave. And that is never more in focus than on Memorial Day. For men and women who gave the ultimate. And they were rewarded for that, not for what they got. Each of you should use whatever gift you have to receive to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. That's 1 Peter 4:10. And of course your verses are all, I have marked for you at the bottom. So it's all about this whole service thing and willing service. And that's what we're going to see today and next week as our third principle for how to live under pressure. So let's get right into the book of Daniel. I need somebody that's really willing to read the first 13 verses. A big, long poem. Go ahead. Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 through 13.
In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means. Then the astrologers answered the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it. The king replied to the astrologers, This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me. Once more they replied, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it. Then the king answered, I am certain that you are trying to gain time, because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is just one penalty for you. If you have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change, so then tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me. The astrologers answered the king, There is no man on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among men. This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death.
Whoa. All right. Talk about an impossible demand. But let's go right back to verse 1, because verse 1 gives us another timestamp. So here's our second timestamp in the book of Daniel in just 2 chapters. It says, in the second reign of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Now, in Chaldean time thinking, which was different than Jewish time thinking, when you ascend to the throne, that is not your first year. So any part of the year is not counted. Now, we know that he won this. It's in history books. In Carchemish, he knocks off Egypt. They become the big dog in the entire Middle East, the entire known world. Nabopolassar, his dad, dies shortly thereafter, and he becomes king. So he's king for the rest of the year. That's just his ascension year. So year 1 doesn't start until their calendar starts again. So by the second year, we've already gone through 2.5 to 2 3/4 years as far as our calendar goes. So when you read that timestamp, because we're all going to see, remember how long was Daniel in training?
3 years.
3 years. Jewish thinking was any part of a year or any part of a day was considered the whole day, was considered the whole year. So this would have been 3 years under Jewish thinking, 2 years under Babylonian thinking. Math thing. You see the difference there? Give me a head nod, something, so I know you're okay. Because I don't want to lose you on just some math stuff. So second year, but we're actually talking 3 years on the calendar, so that's important because Daniel and his friends were put in for how long of a training program?
3 years.
3 years. Keep that in mind.
Professor,
Yes?
how do we know that they're using Babylonian thinking here? Is it because it's written in Aramaic at this point, or?
It's not written in Aramaic, and I'm going to bring that up in just a minute until verse 4. And Daniel switches from Hebrew to Aramaic, but he's also talking to and writing from the society that he's in. And so everything, and we can look at it based on some other clues, which we'll see in later chapters, that he's still writing in a Babylonian mindset. He doesn't switch to Aramaic until verse 4, but don't jump a hole ahead of me there. You're on track, and there's some important stuff there, but that's coming. So Daniel and his friends are now a part of the wise men. So we know, because they're being hunted down, that to be killed because the king is ticked, that they're a part of the course. We know that what happened before with the 10 hands higher has occurred. They're in. It may have just happened. We don't have an exact timeline there, but they're now a part of the wise men corps. But they're approximately how old?
18.
About 18. So they're going to be way down on the food chain. You know, they haven't been in this wise men group for a long time, plus they're super young. So they haven't been called in, but the king says, wipe them all out. I can't stand any of them. So they're being hunted down with all the rest. So what brings all this about? Well, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And in that, after having the dream, it says that he's troubled. Now, troubled indicates a deep disturbance. One that brings apprehension. One that leaves you freaked. Have you ever had a dream where you woke up just kind of freaked afterwards? That's what's going on here. He's seen something that bothers him so much, he knows that something is out there that doesn't look good, and he's apprehensive, and he needs to figure out what's going on. The root word here means to strike like a hammer on an anvil. Think about your heartbeat. That's what's going on. That's what the physical description is. It's like a hammer striking an anvil. He wakes up and he's just that kind of disturbed. And the result was he can't sleep. Well, yeah, I guess so. If your heart is thumping in your chest and you are freaked out and you've seen something that you don't understand and it don't look good, sleep isn't the next thing coming for you. On other occasions, God has used dreams with Gentile rulers. We've already, if you understand and look at Bible history, this is not something that God has done. Hey, I know, let's try this. Abimelech, Genesis 23. He's warned about taking Sarah as his wife. Of course, that's after Abraham kind of, lied. Oh, she's my sister. And God in a dream comes and says, you take her as your wife, y'all dead. And everybody in your family. Another case, Pharaoh, Genesis 41, 1 through 8. That's the famous dream of the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows that leads to Joseph. There's all kinds of Joseph and Daniel correlations. Man, their stories just fold together. It's beautiful. So God has used this with Gentile rulers. See, God can talk to anybody he wants. Believers, God's children, don't have an exclusive on who God talks to. I've told that to people before, and they go, what? See, if God wants to put information out to somebody, he'll talk to anybody he wants. See, he's God, and he made him. So he's done this before, where he's talked to kings in a dream and said, here's stuff you need to know. That's my spyware coming on. Thank you. God even uses sleeplessness to his purposes. The story of Ahasuerus in Esther chapter 6. If you know the story of Esther, he can't sleep. And so he goes back in and starts reading the Chronicles. What has all happened in my court? And that's when he finds out that Mordecai did something really great for him. Like, kept him from getting killed. Did some great stuff. And that's when he says, hey, what have I ever done for Mordecai? He did this great thing. Well, you haven't really done anything. And that's when all of a sudden Mordecai is brought up and Laban loses his lunch and wants to kill. And then everything starts, it's that domino theory. That's the first domino of the fall, is God kept the king up all night to where he now starts looking in and finds out that Mordecai. So God can use sleeplessness in his benefit as well. So this is nothing new for how God does stuff. It's funny then, after this dream, all 4 classes of wise men are summoned. It names them all in Scripture. We saw them introduced last week, for the last 2 weeks. He names them all. Bring them all to me. Bring the astrologers, bring the magicians, bring the charlatans, bring them all. Somebody's got to tell me what's going on here. But the king here is pretty sharp. He doesn't want to be manipulated or lied to. They respond to the king. He says, not only are you going to tell me the dream, the interpretation. Do you remember what I told you, what they had? They had whole books. So they would go in and consult their books. Okay, if you're dreaming of a cow, then that means this. And if you see this, that means, so they need the dream. But he says, I ain't buying what y'all selling. So here's the test. You guys think you can talk to the dead? Remember, they were also necromancers. They could talk to the spirit world. You talk to the spirit world. You talk to the gods. All this stuff that you think you can do. And you tell me what the dream was. See, I know what it is. So I'll know right off if you're lying. And then when you tell me what the dream is, then you can interpret it for me. Yeah. They respond to the king in Aramaic. Now this is important here because Aramaic is the international language. A 100 years or so ago, that used to be French. Now it's English. It changed from time, but they respond in Aramaic. At this point, in verse 4, Daniel stops writing in Hebrew and starts writing in Aramaic. And he will write in Aramaic all the way through parts of chapter 7. When we get there, I'll show you where he stops. This is kind of significant in that all of this is written in the language that the Chaldeans, the Babylonians would all understand. So from verse 4 on, he writes it in their language because he wants them to be able to read and understand this. Up till now, it's been written in Hebrew for a Hebrew audience. Now he's writing it in Aramaic. And he keys in the reader with that, saying they responded to the king in this international language that all of the kingdoms that he's conquered would understand. And here's that impossible demand. Tell me what he dreamed, and then tell him the interpretation. And I love what he does immediately afterwards. Did you hear it when he was reading? He said, here's what I want you to do. You tell me what I dreamed, then you tell me the interpretation. And if you don't, I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to pull you to pieces, and I'm going to wipe out your house and turn it, and some translations say, and turn your house into a trash heap or a dung hill. So it's not just you, your whole family is at risk. You got that?
It kind of seems like he feels like he's been duped too many times.
He's
kind of fed up with us.
I get that. I got that too, kind of a read between the lines that, this isn't his first rodeo, and he's thinking, I mean, Scripture doesn't tell me that, but I get that feeling as well. So he's saying, here's what's going, and then after he gives them, it's the carrot and the stick. He starts with the stick, and then he hands the carrot. But if you do this, oh man, riches and honor and power, and so I'm just going to dump it on you because I need to know. This thing kept me up all night. They can't do that. So they ask for the dream again. You see, King, well, it's like this. And we can't do that. So if you'll just tell us the dream, we'll just, maybe you didn't understand when we asked for you to tell us the dream, so they say it again. Just tell us the dream, and then we'll interpret it for you. The king accuses them of stalling and even plotting to kill him. Are you plotting to give me false information? Are you plotting to take me out? Is that what it is? Again. No, almighty one. That's what you're doing. You're just stalling. You know all this stuff, allegedly. So go ahead and tell me. If they don't do as the king demands, and it actually says he's going to cut them to pieces, this is what was done, and actually into medieval times. Sometimes you would be hacked with a big axe, but more often it was done with 4 horses, tied to each one of your appendages, and then the horses would be whipped in 4 different directions. So you're still alive for a minute. For a little bit. That's what he's threatening them with. They knew that the king remembered his dream, so there was no faking it. If you watch the video I have on there, and the guy says, well, the king didn't remember his dream, so he needed to tell. No, because then if he didn't remember it, they told him a fake dream, he wouldn't have a basis of understanding. They knew that he knew, and they couldn't fake this one. Let me ask this question. This is audience participation. This isn't stare at the board. Why do you think Nebuchadnezzar would be so willing to dispose of all of his wise men?
He thought they were frauds.
Perhaps the dream was so horrible to him that he could not retell it. And he wanted them to know and feel it so their interpretation would be accurate.
Very good. Yeah, both those. Anybody else? You're all on the right track here.
He probably got tired of paying him.
What am I paying you for anyway? I came up with a couple things that you guys are all hitting on the right cylinders here. I think first their inability to get the necessary information that he needed proved that their power was limited, and they were not in touch with the gods like they claimed to be. He was showing that they were not what they said they were. Secondly, the king probably felt that the dream foretold some terrible disaster, and that's what you're exactly seeing. You guys hit exactly the same things that I saw in here. So he sees some terrible disaster that was going to happen to him, because it's a man-like statue. We'll see that dream here later. And it's destroyed. I mean, it's destroyed down to powder. And he's thinking, is this me? I'm freaked. I can't sleep.
He's already had a little teeny exposure to Daniel's and his friends' God and how well they came through the diet thing.
If he was told, yeah.
But he sees, if they're looking 10 times better, they're looking 10 times or more better than all the other people in the training.
Yeah, if he was told, you're absolutely right. But what we're going to see is this, in this instance, he's really comes face to face with Daniel's God.
Yes, he does.
And the testing of the prophet, or, testing of the prophet's not an uncommon thing, right? The Old Testament prophets, they told a short-term prophecy, and if they got that one wrong, it'd kill them.
You're done.
You're done. And even in modern times, or more modern times, some of the current false religions, some people have tried to test that and say, hey, you interpreted that, do it again, let's see if you get the same result. Oh, well, I can't do it twice. You gotta test people to make sure what they're saying.
Well, and in so many of them, and in all of these palm readers that are out there and all this other nonsense, you'll find that their answers tend to be vague, generalities, something not specific. Do not ever visit one of these people. But if somebody comes up and claims that they are, then say, okay, what's my name? If you can see the future and you can know what's going on, let's just start with something really simple. Yeah, they won't be able to do that. And he doesn't want something vague. He wants something very, very specific. So, with some failure, there are consequences. And the wise men come back and say, you know what? This is impossible, O king. And they start whining. They start complaining. You know, king, I'm like a third generation wise man. And my dad served your dad, and my grandpa served your grandpa, and no other king has ever asked for this. They just asked for the interpretation. I got books for that. Nobody ever said, tell me the dream and then interpret it. So, basically they became 14-year-old kids. And if you want to put a if you wanted to put a big stamp over this ain't fair. Parents, ever heard that one? Now go back to when you were 13. Did you ever say that one?
Did you ever say it yesterday?
And that's what they're doing. They're just saying, this ain't fair. This ain't right. They said that, and then I love this statement. They said that only the gods would know. And you know, the gods aren't here. This is great because you know, by saying that, they set up the fact that if someone could do this, like the king asked, who would they be in contact with?
God.
Absolutely. Well, in their thinking it would be the gods, but anybody that could do this would be a real person that was really talking to the divine. Nebuchadnezzar didn't want to be tricked with some made-up answer. Human knowledge here was shown to be completely bankrupt, which sets the stage for divine revelation given to Daniel. Do you see how God manipulated this entire thing? He's going to show his glory. He's going to show his honor. He's going to show how bankrupt these guys are by one question out of Nebuchadnezzar. Tell me the dream I had. And God sets the entire stage up for failure. Of course, they can't. They've whined, they've complained, and now Nebuchadnezzar is ticked. And immediately orders the execution of the entire wise men cohort, which is going to include Daniel and his 3 friends. Okay, I'm through with all of y'all. I'm going to go back to some of my southern roots. It's all y'all.
That's right.
I'm through with all of you. I don't want to see a single wise man, astrologer, necromancer, whatever you call yourselves, y'all gone. I'm tired of it. You can't do that. You're not talking to gods. I saw something that I think that God sent me. It's important, and you can't help me. And so now Daniel and his friends are up for execution. And apparently, we're going to see from the story that they weren't just walk in and hack them. They were being gathered together for a big execution. And we're going to see that we're going to be able to figure that out because of what Daniel does immediately next. So give me 2 more readers, starting in verse 14 through 22. And then pick up in verse 23 through 30. Okay.
Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removeth the kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him.
I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demands. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was
Belteshazzar.
Okay, that. Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, the secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart.
Wow. So Daniel gets in with some pretty strong intervention. So let's pick up the story. The king is ticked. He's ordered the killing of everybody in the wise men corps. Arioch, kind of the chief executioner, captain of the guard, the guy who's going to go and round these all up and then kill them. And Daniel contacts this guy and uses discretion and discernment. What does that sound like? It's on the board. Does that sound like our second principle? Conducting ourselves politely and respectfully? He's 18 at this point. Again, not an age known for respect in some cultures, particularly ours. I don't know about their culture. My guess is it was a far more trained, respectful culture than ours. But he uses discretion and discernment. He's using that second principle that we just learned last week to talk to this guy and ask, why did the king order this? Why is there such a rush? What? Why are we being killed exactly? The fact that the chief executioner takes the time to explain to Daniel, let's read between the lines a little bit here. What does that tell you about how he views Daniel?
Respect. He also seems reluctant to go kill all these people.
There is, I kind of get that as well. But Daniel, it also, I think, I'm kind of reading between the lines here a little bit, but I think Daniel's reputation and the way he handled himself in front of this guy, and this guy takes the time to just say, shut up and get in the cage with everybody else, we're going to kill you in the morning. He takes the time to explain to him. That tells me a lot about, again, how Daniel conducts himself and how people respond to him.
Do you think maybe this Arioch man was hoping that he would find a solution to present?
Well, yeah, we're going to practice. If you heard it read, and I'm going to key on that here in just a second.
And he's thinking, well, this is to my benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. After hearing the reply, he goes or is taken. So, you just don't go before the king. So my guess is he tells Arioch, hey, I've got something. Let's go before the king. To ask for some time so that he can fulfill the king's demand. Now, the interesting thing I find here is that apparently he assures Nebuchadnezzar that he can do this. Because when the magicians and the astrologers, when they asked for more time, what did Nebuchadnezzar do? What did he accuse them of?
Stalling.
Y'all stalling, man. You're messing with me. Modern language, you disrespected me, dude. You tell me what I want.
Well, the king knows how smart Daniel is.
He does. And he may have remembered him, oh yeah, you're the really sharp guy. But he also apparently tells him, I can do this. We can get this done for you. Now give me a little bit of time to get it done. And the king says, oh sure. Because the other guy said, we can't do this. And he says, you're stalling. Now Daniel comes before him and says, I'm going to take care of you, king. I'm willingly going to serve you and do what you want. And Nebuchadnezzar gives him the time. Now, what does he do? This is absolutely key.
Yes.
He goes back and talks to his friends. First thing is he goes and finds godly friends and says, pray with me. We're going to talk to the God of heaven for his mercy. And notice also he uses their Hebrew names. He's writing in Aramaic to an Aramaic understanding audience, so now he uses their godly Hebrew names. Pretty subtle, pretty sharp. He's not using the names of I'm fearful and I'm downcast and all those other names that we saw in week 1. They were together in danger because all 4 of them were up for the chopping block. And so now they're together in intercession before their God. God's mercy here, in fact, is in stark contrast to the merciless killing of all the royal counselors. What does the king do when he's frustrated? Kill them all. What are they asking God for? Mercy. Stark contrast. Of course, their faith to God's answer to their needs has already been evident in their dietary issues, which you guys have brought up this morning. They already know God can do this.
They also gave credit to God, too. They didn't say this is something we can do, like the magicians and everything like that. They're like, God is in charge of interpreting dreams. God decided to give you this vision. We'll pray to God to help, They weren't taking any credit for it.
Nope.
They were giving the glory to God. They were letting this act be glorifying to God.
And we're going to see people taking credit where credit isn't due, but that's people.
You've already pointed out that the astrologers and wise men had set the standard for God being the one that can do it.
Yes.
And God doesn't dwell with people, they
No.
said.
Yeah, they actually got it right, which is kind of funny. And all they do is set Daniel up for exactly where God wanted him set up for.
Which is not by chance.
When they're praying, they said they're praying to the God of heaven. Now, the God of heaven, that phrase acknowledges the information that they needed could only come from heaven. So exactly as you guys pointed out, and what the astrologers kind of knew was that only God can provide this. Then during the night, the dream and its meaning is given to Daniel in a vision. All right, I'm going to do a little testing here. Okay, you've all been prayed for. Here we go. What is the difference between a vision and a dream? Do you remember?
One's in
Awake
person.
and sleep.
Thank you. Awake and sleep. Visions, you're all conscious, and then God gives you something. You can see and interact. A dream is just that. So, what I see in my mind's eye, and Scripture doesn't tell us, but the 4 of them are in there praying, and Daniel gets up to go get a drink of water, or go to the bathroom, something. I don't know. He gets off his knees for a minute, and then all of a sudden God says, "Here it is." And while his 3 friends are down there saying, "God, we need your mercy, please," you can see his friends praying for him in my mind's eye, and this fantastic 4-person prayer thing going on, and then all of a sudden, boom, the entire thing comes in front of Daniel. He can see the statue, he can see the stone, and then God says, "And this is what all of this means." Right there in response to prayer. Now, what's their immediate response? This is great. Yeah.
Praising God.
Their immediate response is to start praising God. This, and I don't have the time to do it here, but parsing out and looking at this is essentially a psalm. Just every bit as much as the book of Psalms, that's what this is. And of course, Daniel had been raised in the temple and whatnot, so he writes under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit this beautiful psalm. And it starts off, "May the name of God be praised forever and ever." Opens with that call to praise. Constant praise. And then it says, "The name of the God." The name of God. May the name of God be praised. The name of God is the character. Your name meant your character. And a lot of ancient cultures, names weren't just something random or, after your grandma or whatnot. And they had to do with your character and who you were. And if you ever have done a study, maybe one of these days we'll do a study of the names of God. There's a bunch of them. They all reveal something about who God is and how he operates. And so that's what he says. May the name of God, may the character of God, may God who he is in all of his glory, may that person be praised. Talks about wisdom. So he gets his knowledge of the dream. Power, God's power. His sovereignty over the events of human history. God, here's some of the character traits. You have wisdom. You can tell me about the dream. Hey, you gave it to him in the first place. Your power. You can set up kings. You can depose kings. He changes times and seasons. That's that setting up kings and deposes them. Again, his sovereignty. Remember when I introduced this book, what's one of the overarching themes of the entire book?
God's sovereign.
Yeah, thank you. Clue, it's his sovereignty. And that's what he's putting out again in this poem of praise, this hymn of praise. He gives wisdom and knowledge given to the wise and the discerning. Now, both wise and discerning allude to those things who are spiritually so, which would be believers. Wisdom and knowledge is given to the wise and the discerning. Those who know you, those who respect you, those who honor you, O God, you're giving them wisdom. They already know you, therefore they're wise, and now you're giving them increased wisdom. He says, God reveals the deep and hidden things. These are matters which are beyond human knowledge. How many of you want God to reveal the deep and hidden things that are beyond human knowledge? Yes. And the great thing is, in his word, he does a lot of that. You just have to go in and dig it out. It's all there. He says, what lies in darkness? Now, the darkness here is going to be the darkness of human understanding. This is the darkness of the wise men. They couldn't understand any of this. They couldn't figure any of this out. And then he mentions light. Light represents the wisdom possessed by God. Somebody want to look up 1 John 1:5 real quick?
I've got it.
Go.
This is the message we heard from Jesus and now declare to you. God is light and there is no darkness in him at all.
See the difference? And Daniel recognizes this in the 6th century BC. He said, God, you're the light. That's where this wisdom and knowledge and understanding is all coming from. And then he closes with praise again. So notice his prayer, his hymn, how does it open? Praise. How does it close? Praise. And everything in it just explains the praise. In your homework this week, I'm going to have you kind of concentrate on that a little bit. What things do you need to praise God for that you haven't? When you talk to God, does it start off with praise or does it start off with... Notice the personal pronouns that are all in this. I, my, me, we, us. See, Daniel did not forget to thank God for answered prayer. He didn't go, that's the answer. Thank you, God. He took the time to say, thank you. He invites his children to ask. But the Christian should always remember to say thank you. Let me read to you Luke 17, verses 17 and 18. Then Jesus said, were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Didn't any return to give glory to God except this one foreigner? That's a story of Jesus healing the 10 lepers. And the one guy who wasn't a Jew turned around, came back to Jesus and said thank you and bowed and worshiped. And he told them, get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. sometimes, as believers, God does exactly what we've asked for, and what do we tend to do? Yes, got it, thank you. And down the road we go, without ever stopping to say, wow, thanks. So now Daniel gets back before the king. He goes to the executioner, Arioch, and tells him, hey, don't kill all these other guys. That's kind of amazing. These other guys aren't believers. What could Daniel have said? I got the answer. See ya. Bye. Y'all dead. Got it. He said, no, don't kill any of them. I have the answer. Take me before the king. Daniel shows a concern for others who aren't believers. Who does that look like to you? That looks like Jesus. I am loving others even when they're not where they belong, even when they don't believe, even when they're doing things that God says no. He says, no. Don't kill them. Let me take care of this whole thing.
I'm sure there was an element of jealousy and pride among these astrologers and wise men.
Only if they were human.
Yeah, that they'd have gladly thrown Daniel under the bus to save their life.
Absolutely. Daniel sets a whole different bar. He sets one like God would have it done. You care about others while I'm taking. See, you didn't get this interpretation on your own. This isn't yours. And I love what Arioch does. So you can almost see him grabbing Daniel by the shoulder. Come on, boy. We're going before the king. And then he gets before the king. What does he say? King, I have found a guy. No, you didn't.
He found you.
So I kind of think old Arioch is in there going, King, if you're handing out some of them prizes and money and stuff, I found a guy. Here he is. I found him. Does that sound normal?
Yes.
Is that what people do?
Well, the other thing too with that is that he had a lot of faith in Daniel that he could fulfill.
Yeah, because if now Daniel screwed up and he's the guy who found him. Yeah. So it kind of also goes back to how he felt about Daniel. You remember he explained to
Well,
him.
the king's probably going, what are you doing standing here? You're supposed to be killing people.
Yeah. So, okay.
I found the guy.
Yeah, I found the guy. Okay, we can, hold up. We got it. I got it. Anybody who reads the Bible doesn't see the humor in it, God, I know, has a sense of humor because there's funny all through Scripture. This is one of those funny things. Yeah, I found him. Nebuchadnezzar then lays out the requirements again and asks if Daniel can do it. Okay, here, y'all, you know what you have to do here. You got to tell me the dream and then you interpret it. You understand? There's no fudging on this. Daniel replies, and this is what Scott was bringing out, that no mere man could do it, but there's a God in heaven who can. Do you see what he just tied in to the wise men? And Daniel wasn't there for that conversation. But now he puts it in the king's mind, hey, just like the wise men said that only a God, there is a God in heaven who can do this. I love this picture. In a very respectful manner, Daniel was telling him that the paganism of Babylon and all pagan religions were essentially worthless. And that's your fill in the blank, because I know it gets low on the screen. They were worthless. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I was just going to say, I just noticed it says, Daniel's writing all this, right? He's writing, he said, the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. So Daniel's going back and this is what the king is telling me my name,
which the name he was given back in chapter 1.
Right, he's worthless or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Are you, this guy, me, who you said was basically an idiot, I'll tell you what a dream is.
But it's from, there is a God in heaven who's going to do this.
Right.
I'm the guy who's standing here, but this is who's doing it. Yeah, and he uses his Babylonian name, or the king uses his Babylonian name, but yet Daniel blows right past that, still respectful, and basically tells him, all this stuff that you've got around, it's worthless. Here's where the real stuff is. Only God exists and is able to help him. Daniel gets ready to describe the dream, but before he does that, he lets Nebuchadnezzar know what it that it concerns the future. So he already kind of tells Nebuchadnezzar, okay, this is where it's going. This is all about the future. And I love it. God gives him even more than what Nebuchadnezzar asked for. What did he ask for? Tell me the dream, then interpret it. Daniel is going to do that, but he's also going to tell him what the king was doing when he got this dream in the first place.
Where he was at.
He goes beyond what the king asked for. The term there in Scripture says, in a lot of your translations, in the latter days. In the latter days, that phrase occurs 14 times in the Old Testament. And it always denotes the closing period of time. Anytime you see the latter days, all 14 times there in the Old Testament, it's all talking about the end of time. He also tells Nebuchadnezzar the purpose of the dream. And here's where he goes beyond what Nebuchadnezzar has asked for. He reminds him of the circumstances. Okay, here's how it started. You're in bed. You're the king. Your dad's been dead for a couple years. You are the king of anything and everything. And what you were thinking about was the future. How long is my kingdom going to last? How long am I going to stay on the throne? That's kind of endemic to people in power anyway. By the way, power, as we see in our own government, is the most intoxicating drug on the planet. More so than meth, more so than, what's the drug Harry's getting all the time, Stan? I just lost it. Fentanyl. More than any of that, power is the most intoxicating.
You should really clarify what's the drug Harry is getting all the time.
Well, as a police officer, he is arresting people that have fentanyl.
Thank you.
Including a little while ago, he got a courier from one of the cartels with an entire car full of fentanyl. He busted a courier from the cartel on a traffic thing, and so now he's testifying in federal court and doing all this stuff. Yeah. But more intoxicating, more addictive than any of that is power. And the king is laying there worrying about his power. And Daniel tells him all this. See, I'm not going to tell you the dream. I'll get to that. I'm going to tell you what was happening to set this up. Here's what you were thinking about. You can you see Nebuchadnezzar sitting on the throne in your mind's eye? He's sitting there going, yeah. So, yeah. It's exactly what I was thinking about. That's what was going on.
What also reveals that God does know our thoughts.
He does know our thoughts. And he tells him, God has granted you that knowledge. The God of heaven, who you don't know, who you don't worship, who you don't bow before, has told you, O king, I'm going to tell you what you wanted to know. It's pretty darn cool. Daniel then humbly refuses any credit and let the king know that he was only there because of what God had showed him. What could Daniel have done?
Taking the credit.
What did Arioch do?
Took the credit.
What I did. And he does completely the opposite. He goes in and says, you know what? God is doing this. Here's what's going on. I'm going to stop the story here. Next week we will pick up with the dream and the interpretation of it. But let me draw us to a close here with the third principle of how to live under pressure. See, Daniel using principle number 2, which is politeness and respect. He uses principle number 2 to find out what's happening, and then willingly seeks to go serve the king that had ordered his execution. If somebody's ordered you killed, generally what's your opinion of it?
You're going to stay outside.
Yeah, I'll stay out of his sight, see if I can go run hide. And he says, no, I'm going to go serve this person that's ordered me dead. Not a normal reaction. This is the same principle that Jesus taught on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 41. This is the famous going the second mile. It says this, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. On the contrary, if anyone, and this is what Pastor Jerry brings out all the time, if anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. As for the one who wants to sue you and take away your shirt, let him have your coat as well. This is not normal, people, to the way we think. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. See, Jesus is going to restate the principle that Daniel lived 600 years earlier in his famous Sermon on the Mount. Somebody look up Proverbs 25, verses 21 through 22. We'll finish here. Proverbs 25, verses 21 to 22. Volunteer?
I got it.
Go ahead.
21 to 22?
Yep, 2 verses. Proverbs 25. Same principle.
If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For he will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you.
See, that's the same principle that Daniel followed. Was Nebuchadnezzar his enemy? Yes, he was. He had captured him, brought him, and now he was going to have him killed. And he says, no, I'm going to go serve the king.
It's also found in Romans chapter 12.
Yeah, there's a lot. Because it's a biblical principle. So there's our third principle. How to live under pressure in a godless society is to willingly serve others, especially those who oppose you. It's easy to serve those who are your friends, who are doing good things for you. So there's our third principle of how do we live in America in 2021. We willingly serve others. Now you may be wondering, how does this help you to live under pressure in a godless society? You say, okay, Pastor Harry, that's a really great principle, but how does this actually help me? Well, let me give you practical stuff. First off, if you're being obedient to Scripture, what does God do with obedience? He rewards it every time. Secondly, when you're seeking to serve others, guess who you're not thinking about? That would be you. And how many things can you think of at one time? That would be 1. I know women, you think, I can think of 12 things at once. No, you can't. You can just think of 12 things far faster than men can. You can only think of one thing at a time. And if you are thinking of serving others, you are not thinking of you and how you are trying to survive in a godless society and under all this pressure. How is my business holding up? How is my health holding up? How are my rotten kids doing that stupid stuff? Whatever you're thinking about, you can't think about that if you're thinking about serving somebody else. That's how this principle works. You can only think about one thing at a time. So, quick review. Principle 1, remember your name. Who is God said you are? Principle 2, live politely and respectfully. And that's all the time, not just, when somebody's watching or listening to you. And principle 3, willingly serve others. Next week, we will look at the dream and the eschatology that Nebuchadnezzar is given. Paul, would you close us?
Lord, your Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to come and to understand how you created all of what we're doing today and what we're reaping today and enjoying today because of all that you did in the past. Thank you for Harry giving us this history lesson to show how you worked and how you continue to work in our lives. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen.